Well, actually, this morning I'm going to try to compress two things in one. I'm going to try to do that. I'm going to have two different things speaking about. I'm going to just ask some questions at the beginning for the first 15 minutes or so, and then I'll get into what I want to talk about. This morning I'm actually going to be looking at some prophecy. I know that the theme of our ministry for the past 8 years has been almost exclusively righteousness by faith. Righteousness by faith in collaboration with the truth about God. And I know that this is a message forever. But I believe that there is a reason why God has put prophecy in the Bible. And He has ended the Bible with prophecy, and there's a reason. And in recent times, we have been focused a little bit on some of these prophecies, and I'd like to share a little bit of what we have been looking at. As always, when it comes to prophecy, especially future prophecy, the only person who can be dogmatic is God. God alone is infallible. But I think we are supposed to be able to look at what is happening and come to fairly reasonable conclusions. Because prophecy is intended to do something for us. It's intended to help to prepare us for the coming of Christ. Help us to be prepared for what is coming on the earth. That's why God gave it. So it makes sense to believe that we are supposed to understand it. At least to have a fairly good understanding. And I think the time has come that we really need to find a proper harmony between the truth of the Father and His Son, intertwined with righteousness by faith, and combined with what is happening in the world, a proper understanding of a prophetic scenario. I'm not claiming to be able to do all that, but I just want to put in a little bit of something that I'm going to ask us to think about. But I want to begin by asking you this question that I'd like us to consider very seriously. And my question is our truth present truth? That's what I want to talk about for the first 15 or 20 minutes. Is our truth present truth? Now, what is present truth? Well, truth actually is what is everlastingly correct, accurate. And in the context of our Christian experience, it is what pertains to our God and our salvation. But this part of it, present truth, present, what does the word present mean? Well, I'll tell you, it means now. Thank you, Gary. I'll tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean absent. Present. And it struck me as I was thinking about this recently that present truth is only present truth if the elements that we are focusing on are actually present. If those elements are not present, is it really present truth? I was thinking about this, and I had to do some introspection because I recognized that a lot of what we perhaps refer to as present truth is not really present truth. It's sometimes future truth. And sometimes it's past truth. Sometimes far distant past truth. In actual fact, a lot of what we are focusing on and calling present truth is really absent truth. One thing that I have also recognized is that present truth always has the power of God accompanying it. Present truth has a dynamism about it because it reaches the need of the people at the present. Everybody can see its relevance. Everybody can understand it impacts my life when it's present truth. I mean, when John the Baptist came preaching present truth, Judea was electrified. They had always heard about a coming Messiah. They had always heard about the coming of the kingdom. And they went about their sleepy business for 400 years. And then one day this strange, hairy man came out of the wilderness. And he said with absolute authority, the time is fulfilled and the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent and believe the gospel. And they came in droves to the Jordan to be baptized. What had been prophecy, what had been past truth, suddenly became present reality. And it had an effect. And that's always, when I think about it, that's always the way present truth works. And if we profess to be speaking present truth, and it lacks that power, it lacks that ability to move and electrify people, then you have to ask the question, do we really preach present truth? I want you to consider the things that we focus on, and the things that we call present truth. And I want you to ask yourself seriously, is this present truth? I mean, I don't mean to be critical, but 170 years ago, the early Adventists began to preach that the hour of his judgment is come. Man, it moved the people then. 170 years ago, the hour of his judgment is come. For 170 years, you have been telling people that the hour of his judgment is come. That was before I was born. Several generations have passed since. Do you expect me to be moved by that today? Okay, I sound critical. All right. Something about present truth, something about our understanding of present truth doesn't quite fit here, because present truth is supposed to electrify and move people. It doesn't even move us anymore. It's a doctrine that we teach. It's a part of our 28 fundamentals, or however many there are, but it doesn't move people anymore. To tell people that books started being examined 160 years ago. Okay. My father lived through it. My grandfather lived through it. Maybe my great-grandfather. And I've spent most of my life through that. And it has not affected me or the planet in one way that I can discern. So how is that supposed to get me excited? If you even think about the second angel's message, Babylon is fallen. When did that happen, according to our theology? 170 years ago, Babylon fell. Really? And there have been generations come and gone, grown up in Babylon, lived in Babylon, been saved in Babylon, and many of them that we call Babylonians will make it into the kingdom. So how is it relevant to say Babylon fell in 1844? And even the mark of the beast message, the third angel's message. If any man worship the beast and his image, I mean, in 1888, I could see how that could have had an impact, because in 1888, you know what was about to happen, right? There was about to be a Sunday law. A.T. Jones went before the Congressional Committee, and oh boy, he stopped it. But that's over 100 years ago. Today, when you talk about a Sunday law, nothing with respect to a Sunday law has happened ever since I became a Christian. Nothing. In the 1980s, I think, in one of these South Sea islands, Fiji, they passed the Sunday law. And I was all excited, and everybody I knew was all excited. It just faded away into nothingness. For the past 38 years since I've been a Christian, every year the Pope says something about Sunday, or the European Union makes a little stir and everybody gets excited, but nothing is happening. Is this really the way present truth is supposed to work? And you have to think that either we are not preaching present truth, or there's something wrong, something doesn't fit. We know that the three angels' messages are the last messages for the world. We are sure of that, right? Revelation 14 tells us clearly, I saw another angel fly through the midst of the heavens. And what does he have to preach? The everlasting gospel. Okay, there we know what our message is. It's the Father and the Son in the context of Christ and his righteousness. This is the everlasting gospel. And it is called everlasting because it goes from eternity to eternity. This is something that never changes. It is perpetually present truth. It doesn't change. It cannot be modified or adjusted. In every age, this is the good news. the nature and the character of our God and what he has done for us through his Son. But along with this message, you find that another angel, the angel says, fear God and give glory to him, because the hour of his judgment has arrived. And you discover something. This everlasting gospel is set in the context of something happening that is called the hour of God's judgment. And then another angel follows and he says, Babylon has fallen. And the other one talks about the mark of the beast and so on. And you find that there are three messages. One is focused on something happening in God's program. The hour of his judgment has come. Something happening in the false apostate system. Babylon has fallen. And something happening in the secular world. The mark of the beast. So something in heaven, something in a false church, and something in the world. And in the context of this scenario, the everlasting gospel is finally to be preached. And I'm going to tell you, when those three angels really begin to fly, I don't mean as they flew in 1844. I mean as they really will fly when these things become present truth. The world will have the John the Baptist effect. The world will see the John the Baptist effect. That's what I'm telling you. Our message doesn't have that power today because we have largely been preaching absent truth. We have been talking about things that are, to the world today, they're irrelevant. They're past or they're future. What is happening now? What is happening now? Do we see any indications that God is active today that can awaken people and get them out of their seats? This is what present truth means. And I think some of these things are happening. And to be truthful, it probably needs a few sessions to be able to go into it in depth. And I'm only going to be able to throw out a few hints and leave you to look at certain things at this camp meeting. Because I'm going to preach about righteousness by faith. I could never have meetings and not focus on this. But I want to take at least 2 sessions and focus a little bit on the prophecy. And I'm only going to be able to give you some hints of what I have in my mind. So, we're looking at the proclamation of the everlasting gospel. That is a given. That must always be at the center. But what changes is not the message. But you know what changes? The context in which the message is given. It changes all the time. In the Garden of Eden, God brought the planet to the test at a tree. He said, don't eat of the tree. And that was the test at that planet. But it was always still the everlasting gospel. Even Adam needed to remember that the only righteousness I possess, the only life, the only reason for my existence is God and what he has given me in his Son. They never knew this. They never held on to this. And so the planet fell. At every stage, at the time of Noah, it came down to this. Who will go into the ark? The context was who will go into the ark, but the message was the same. In every age, it was always God and his blessings to us through his Son. In 1888, it was an impending Sunday law. What is it today? What is the thing today that is bringing God's people to the test, that is bringing the planet to the test? These are the questions that I would like us to consider. Now, you know, some years ago, 2005, I did a study. I went through the Bible from Genesis, and I added up the ages of the different people as I went through. It's easy to do in the book of Genesis. It gets a little harder when you go to Exodus and the rest of the Bible. But I was able to come to the conclusion that 6,000 years, by my calculation, will come to an end round about the year 2016. It has been in my mind ever since. I know no calculation can be perfect because the Bible gives you rounded numbers, not perfect numbers. It will say, for example, David ruled for 60 years, 40 years. It doesn't say 40 years and 5 months. It just says 40 years. You miss a few months. Every time you take one of those dates, you miss a few months. Either you're short or you're over. So, at the end of it, you come to 6,000 years, I don't know how many years needed to be added on or to be subtracted. Maybe it kind of balances out. I don't know. But I have a rough idea. And my rough idea, as I went through the Bible and I tried to be as careful as I could be, is that 6,000 years end in the year 2016. Now, God never said that Jesus would come after 6,000 years. But when I look at the Bible, I see God's pattern of operation is that he works in cycles of 7. That's his pattern of operation. And it's very tempting. It's more than tempting to believe that God is going to conclude the history of salvation, his work in redeeming humanity in 6,000 years, and we have 1,000-year, a millennium Sabbath. It's very compelling. I mean, I would almost say it's an absolute certainty. I'm just not going that far, but I'm going to tell you, if God is going to end things at 6,000 years, as I'm sure most of us believe, it's not going to be 6,000 plus a day or two. That's not how God operates. God is always precise. Look at the day Jesus died. Look at when Pentecost came. Look at how he has done things in the past. At the appointed time, at the set time, in the self-same day. That's how God operates. So, there is something inside of me building. There's something driving me with the thought. We are at the end of this world. Sometimes I wake up and I feel like there's a current running through my body when it hits my mind. We are there. And man, it's something to think about, brothers and sisters, but it is even something more to believe it. It's something to believe. Nobody can believe this and remain the same way as we are. Nobody. But we have been trained into being theoreticians. We have been trained into being people who speak things and we like those ideas, but they don't really impact our lives. You know, we keep on procrastinating over and over. But sometimes it hits us and then we sit up and we think, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I supposed to do in the light of this reality? That is one thing. But I'll tell you, there are so many other things that are coming together right now. For the first time in the history of the planet, there is a possibility for the mark of the beast to be imposed on us. For the first time. 30 years ago, 40 years ago. How do you get every man, woman, and child and submit them to a system of absolute control? 30 years ago, that was not possible. That was something that we thought about and questioned and wondered 30 years ago. Today, it's almost already a reality that we have a cashless society. Everybody uses cards anymore. Hardly anybody uses cash. Now your driver's license, your passport, it has all your information. You only need to scan a card. And everything about you comes up in some database. Everybody is in some database. I am in the United States database dozens of times. Every time I come in, fingerprint, photograph. I'll never escape. And it's everybody in the world. Every time you come to this place, the same thing happens. But now, they have designed something called a microchip. I don't know if they're going to put this in place, but I'm going to tell you the microchip is so perfect. If I weren't a Christian, I'd be all for the microchip. It's so perfect, right? You just inject it in this little space between your thumb and your forefinger, and it's the size of a grain of rice. It's unbreakable glass, and you can have all your financial information, your bank information, your passport, your driver's license, your identification number, everything about you on this thing, plus tracking system, so that if you ever get lost or kidnapped, they can find you instantly. You never leave your driver's license, you never leave your wallet behind, you never leave your passport. Everything is perfect. And the governments love it, because there'll be no more money laundering, and they'll be able to get rid of the drugs money and all this kind of thing. They love it and they want to put it in place. And they have started experimenting by putting it in animals and old people and some school children. They haven't been able to approach the general population yet because they know you people will rebel. You will rise up in arms, but little by little, they're getting you there, because through terrorism and the desire for greater safety and security, they are convincing people that the government needs to have more control. And you enlightened people are not buying it, but the masses have bought it, and they want it. And the minority will always have to bend for the benefit of the majority. That's the way this world operates. The system is here for this mark of the beast system to be implemented, where you can't do anything. Look, in Jamaica, whenever I have to change a check above a certain amount, I have to say, where did you get this from? Who sent it to you? What was the purpose? What kind of work does the person do? Every detail. I mean, I feel like a criminal when I go to the Cambia or the bank and they start interrogating me. I sold my car. I went to the bank to buy a check so I could buy another one. Where did you get this money? I sold my car. Do you have a receipt? I said, give me back the money. I'll go buy cash. So finally, a lady that I knew in the bank, she came and she talked to the other person, and I got the check, but I was fuming. And I'm thinking, why all these questions? Now, I don't work in a regular job. I don't draw a check from the government. I work with a ministry, and every cent that passes through my hand, I mean, it goes. It's not in the formal system, right? People donate to the ministry and so forth. So I feel always like I'm under the microscope. I keep wondering, when the system becomes formalized that they are trying to institute, how do people like me deal with it? And the rest of us who work in the formal system and you are registered and so on, when the mark of the beast becomes a reality and you are compelled to submit or you can't work, what are we going to do? How are we going to survive? I mean, these are real questions right now. They're not future anymore. The system is already in place. Right now, not only here, but in Europe and in most of the world, we are seeing the most draconian system of government that we have ever seen. The only time you have seen this kind of system before is in heavily communist countries, where the people are so controlled and so dominated, and everything about you is being watched. Right? Now they're encouraging people here. The first thing that happens, anything that is unusual, they call the police and they report on their neighbors, right? And it's in the name of security. But then it becomes like communism, where everybody watched everybody else. And as soon as you step out of line with the government, the police came knocking on your door. It's happening here. Somewhere in, was it Oklahoma or was it California? This man is arrested because he has been having religious meetings in his home. Did you read about it? In America, you're having religious meetings in your home. You can have a party with 100 people, but you can't have a meeting with more than 10, 15 people, a religious meeting in your home. It's against the law. Right? Some places you can't plant a garden in your yard. What kind of place what is going on really? I am appalled when I look at the way people live here. And I mean, it's other places too. It's hardly better in Jamaica. But I mean, you don't have a garden. You can't live if the system breaks down. You exist at the pleasure of the supermarket. You exist because the system works, where they cart these huge amounts of food into the supermarket, and you go there and pick up your supply. You live from the supermarket. The system is in place for something terrible to happen very soon. The world has been turned totally upside down. And certainly, it's not the way God planned it. Things are happening in nature that are inexplicable. We're seeing colder than we have ever seen before, hotter than we have ever seen, wetter than we have ever seen, drier than we have ever seen, floods like you wouldn't have imagined. A couple of years ago, I was in Tennessee and I saw a flood. They say it only came through in 500 years. I don't know how they knew, because I'm sure nobody was here then. But the world is groaning. It's breaking down. In Revelation, it says that God will destroy those who destroy the earth. Right? They say the fish are no longer safe because the radioactivity from Fukushima is poisoning the ocean, and the ocean fish, they are seeing higher levels of radioactivity in these fish than ever before. Strange. If you go on YouTube, I don't know how much credence you can give to it, but they have the pictures. The world is making strange sounds. Have you seen it? Strange sounds coming out of the earth. Animals dropping dead. One man in England, 100 starlings fell dead in his garden. He said they flew at top speed into the ground. Wham, like they were being chased by something. 100 birds dropped dead in his garden. Thousands of them in Arkansas. One species of bird just fell out of the sky one night. Millions of fish, dolphins, whales being washed up. The bees, they say, are disappearing. I don't know what is happening. But things are happening that should make us sit up and take notice. The world is groaning. It is dying. It is in its last death pangs. And surely it is no time for life as usual. It is not even time for a little excitement. It is time for extraordinary things. We are at the end of the world. It was a day like this that the door of the ark closed. Do you know that? What did they see to make them know it was the end of the world? Look, the man went out with his donkey to plant his field. The man was talking to his neighbor. Everything looked normal. Mind you, morally it was rotten to the core, just like today. Morally, I guess they were aborting babies. Men were getting married to men. There was murder and killing, but you look at the world and it was peaceful. Everything was still green. The sky was still beautiful. Rain had never fallen. Everything looked normal. But morally, from heaven's perspective, it was utterly rotten. And what would you say of the world today? Step out on the street and everything looks so peaceful and beautiful. Is it really ready for destruction? Look at the moral fabric of this planet. Somebody says, why would God destroy the earth? Because people are just being people. Because our God sees the end from the beginning. He sees that the more humanity becomes estranged from God, and the worse they become involved in these perversions, the more and more close they grow to dumb animals, to beasts, and the less fit for existence. He sees the way people don't see it. And when we look around, we see that's the condition of the world today. It was a day like today that the door of the ark closed. Don't expect, some people are looking for a third world war before they really awaken. Everybody has their eyes on Syria. Everybody has their eyes on Israel and the Middle East. But I'm of the opinion that the moral state of the world is a greater indicator. The moral state of the world. There has never been a time in the history of the planet when some of the things that are happening now ever happened before. In Australia, a man got married to his dog. In Germany, I understand, I have the news articles. If these are lies, well, I've been lied to. But in Germany, there are some places now where they have brothels for animals. Because, bestiality is legal in Germany, right? So they have brothels, they have houses of prostitution where you can go to pay to be with an animal. The things that are happening on this world, you think, are unbelievable. Unbelievable. But it's what happens because people have driven God out of their thinking. And it's an indicator of where we are in time. So, all right, now we need to go to part 2. All right. So I'm saying that all of these things tell us that we're at the end of time. We are at the end of time. But as we are at the end of time, are we focusing on present truth, or is our truth largely irrelevant? Well, I'm going to focus on something today where I believe we have not properly understood this prophecy. And I'll say a bit more about it later this evening. But this morning I want to look at the beast from the bottomless pit from the book of Revelation. And I'm going to try to just speak off the top of my head by looking at these diagrams that I have here. I'm going to ask you to stick with me, and let's see if we can come to a common conclusion. First of all, I want to go to Revelation 13. Go to Revelation 13. Let's start there. I'm going to ask you some questions, but I'm going to make some rules about the answers, but I'll tell you in just a moment. Revelation 13. Let's look at verse 1. It says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority." All right, that's beast number 1. I want you to turn to Revelation, the same chapter, down to verse 11. "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." Now this is beast number 2, and this beast is also referred to as what? Anybody knows the other name given to this beast in Revelation? The false prophet, thank you. Also called the false prophet, and most of us believe, and I heartily concur, most of us believe that this beast here represents the United States of America. And in fact, most people believe that this first beast represents the papacy. Am I right? All right. The papacy, the United States of America. Go to Revelation 17. I'll read verse 3. It says, "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns." Now, I have a diagram here of the scarlet-colored beast with 7 heads and 10 horns. This is also representing the same thing. But I don't like this picture. I like the woman is here, but you know why I don't like this picture? Can anybody suggest a reason why? If you look at this one and look at this one, does anything strike you? All right, Gary says a crown, somebody else says the horns. The horns, actually. The horns in this picture are accurately placed. In this picture, they are wrong because they are scattered all over the heads. That's not where they are. That's not where they belong. So this picture can be misleading. You have to read the Bible and not look at pictures. They help sometimes. But in actual fact, the horns are not on the heads of the beast. You always see the pictures of the beast with the horns on the heads. That's absolutely wrong. According to the prophecy, that's not where it is. And we'll look at that in just a moment. So this is the third description of a beast. Okay? The one in 13, then the second one in 13, and now this one in Revelation 17. Now, I'm going to go to Revelation 19, read the passage with you, and then ask you a question. Go to Revelation 19 and we look at the last 2 verses. It says, let's start with verse 19 actually. "And I saw the beast." Which beast? "And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to do what? To make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army." Now notice who is there. There's the beast and there are the kings of the earth. And what are they gathered to do? To make war against whom? Him that sat on the horse. And who is that? It's Christ. I want to go up to verse 16 and just show you something. Here is Jesus coming. And it says in verse 16, And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So when Jesus is coming back, it says that he has a name written on his thigh and on his vesture, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And gathered together to fight against him is the beast and the armies of the earth. Now, which beast is this? The beast of chapter 13 or chapter 17? It's a little trick question, but I want you to consider it. Go back to chapter 17. I'm going to read from verse 12 down to verse 14, and I'll ask the question again. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but received power as kings 1 hour with the beast. This is the beast of chapter 17. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. So which beast is this in Revelation 19? Making war against the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, along with the kings of the earth. Who is this beast? It's the one of 17. Are you all following me? I hate to know that I'm leaving you behind. I should really have pictures illustrating everything, but I figure you can follow what I'm saying. Here we are told that this beast in Revelation 17, the 10 horns give him their power. And these 10 horns make war against the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Obviously, these 10 horns plus the beast. Then you go to Revelation 19 and you find the beast is there and the kings of the earth, and they're making war against the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Obviously, this is the fulfillment of what we saw in Revelation 17. So the beast of 17 and the one making war against Christ that is coming are the same beast. All right, so go back to Revelation 19 now, and I'll ask you something else. I'm going through all this to make a point, but it's an important point. Revelation 19, and now it's verse 20 we need. And the beast was taken, and the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. Who is this beast? Which one is this? It's the same one we just read about in the previous verse that is making war. But now he's identified a little differently. The beast was taken and the false prophet that did miracles before him. Where do we see this happening? Revelation 13. Revelation 13 tells you that the second beast that comes up out of the earth, the one that looks like a buffalo in my picture, this beast did miracles and deceived the people that live on earth and told them to worship the first beast, that is this one. Why does this tell you about the beast in chapter 19? It tells you that the beast of chapter 13 is the same as the beast of chapter 17. Do you see why I get to that conclusion? I'm glad some people are nodding their heads. The rest of you, what shall I do? All right. I went through all of this because it's important that you understand that the beast of 13 and 17 are the same beast. They are not two different beasts. They are not, and if you don't understand what I just did or said, please speak to me afterwards, and we can sort it out. But the evidence we just looked at demonstrates this. Plus, I'll tell you a little bit more. How many heads do both beasts have? 7. And how many horns? 10. Do you believe that at the end of time there are 2 beasts having 7 heads and 10 horns that make war against God's people? No! And furthermore, the Bible doesn't talk about one of these beasts. It says the beast, because there's only one beast plus his pal, the false prophet. So the beast of 13 and the beast of 17 are the same exact beast. Now here it gets a little more complicated. Go to chapter 17 again. And we will kind of slow down the jumping back and forth now. So you can kind of settle in 17 for a moment, for a little bit. Now it says in verse 3 again, I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast. In verse 4 it says, and the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls. In verse 17 it says, verse 5 it says, upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. Now I need an answer from you. Who is this woman? The Catholic Church. Somebody says it. So anybody disagrees, put up your hand. You're all certain of this. So then, who is the beast?
Well, a beast in Bible prophecy is never related to a church. It's always related to a king.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I heartily agree with you. Okay? If the beast of 17 and 13 are the same entity, then who is the beast of 13? Because you just said that the beast is not the Catholic Church. The woman is the Catholic Church. I think our attention needs to be slightly refocused. Now, like I say, it needs a lot of time to go through all of this. I'm going to just kind of try to give you a synopsis, and we'll have to take the time maybe in between meetings to look into it in more depth. But here is what I understand. These two beasts in chapter 13, the one that looks like a buffalo and the other one, this one and it's Paul the false prophet, represents two great political systems. I say political, not religious. I agree with Bill. Bill, right? I agree with Bill. A beast represents a political kingdom. That's what it is in Bible prophecy. Now, the second beast represents the United States of America. We have always taught this, and I agree. This first beast has the feet of a bear, the mouth of a lion, and the body of a leopard. What does that remind you of? Daniel 7. The leopard was Greece, the bear was Medo-Persia, and the lion, Babylon. So this beast that we are looking at has elements of these three nations in him. In fact, I'll tell you something else. I believe that he represents not just these three nations, but 7 great nations. Why do I believe this? Because he has 7 heads. And Revelation 17 explains the meaning of the heads. It says they represent 7 mountains on which a woman sits. And I honestly don't believe it represents the 7 hills of Rome. It says there are 7 mountains on which a woman sits, and there are 7 kings or kingdoms. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. How many heads does the beast have at any given moment? Let me ask the question again. How many heads does the beast have at any given moment? 1. The beast never has 7 heads at any moment. So why does God show us 7 heads? Because we are looking at a composite of the beast that takes in the entire history of this beast. Okay? So it shows you the 5 heads that are fallen, and it shows you the one that is not even here yet. But at this moment, the beast has only 1 head. It's the one that is. That effectively at this moment is the beast. But it has passed through 5 stages in the past, and there's still 1 more stage to come. So this beast is a composite, and a composite of what? You find that in Revelation 12, Satan is represented as a dragon. He also has 7 heads and 10 horns. So what I understand is that these 7 heads are the sum totality of Satan's work in this planet against God's people. He has worked through 7 great powers across the ages. And all of these are represented by this one symbol, the beast. So the only question you have is, which head is ruling at the moment and which head is still to come? We can look at the past and we can come to some conclusions. I would suggest to you that Babylon is one of them, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. But I think we should go beyond there to start counting these heads. Why? Because if these heads represent Satan's work against God's people, when did Satan first try to destroy God's people as a people? Egypt. The first time he tried to destroy God's people was in Egypt. He used the Egyptians, he used Pharaoh, and he determined to kill every male child among the Israelites. If he had had his way, Israel would have been wiped out. Egypt was the first power. The next power was Assyria. The Assyrians totally decimated the 10 tribes, took them away captive. Nobody knows where they are today except Armstrong, who says that they're Americans. They are scattered and absorbed into the nations. Assyria was the next power, and then of course Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, and Rome. I can't really identify the power that is to come for a short time. And maybe somewhere along the way, anybody who has some better ideas, you can enlighten me. But the point I really wanted to make is that this beast represents a political entity. It represents the political powers that Satan has always used to try to destroy God's people. Anywhere you find the greatest political power on the planet, there you have found the center of Satan's power. Because Satan said to Jesus, all these things will I give you, all the kingdoms of the world. Because what? It is given into my hand. It is given into my hand. God has given Satan full control of the political powers of the world. And he exalts them to the pinnacle of glory so he might use them to destroy God's people. That's why you know that the greatest nation on earth, you can name it, I won't name it, it is going to be the greatest power for trying to destroy God's people on this planet. You can name it if you will. But that is how it has always been. The greatest power has always had the greatest ability to destroy, and Satan has always used it in trying to wipe out the knowledge of God from this planet. So, we have this first beast. And if the second beast represents the United States of America, where does this first beast come from? Europe. Thank you. Out of the waters, out of the sea. But basically, it represents the old world. While America represents the new world. It represents a new world. So, this beast here is primarily a European power. When you look at all the heads, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome, they have all been from that part of the world. But at the end of time, there is another power that arises in this part of the world. And it cooperates with the first power. So, you look at it and you see that the first power has certain characteristics, and the second one creates an image, sets up a system very similar to that system. Now I'm going to ask you something. What are the key characteristics of this European system? Even before I go there, let us notice something. It says that this beast, this beast. What did I do? Oh, sorry about that. This beast. It says that this beast has 7 heads, 5 have fallen. In fact, I think I have a better diagram. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah. Here's a diagram that I've tried to use to represent it. The woman sitting on the 7 heads, those circles, and the beast represented by that big red rectangle, and the 10 horns represented by those little spikes at the end. Now I think this is how it really should be. Because it says 5 are fallen, 5 heads. Look at those green circles. 1 is, that's a red circle. The other is not yet come, that's a yellow circle. And the 10 horns are 10 kings that have received no power as yet. We didn't read it, but it's in Revelation 17 there. You can read it when you have the time. The 10 horns have received no kingdom as yet, but they will receive power as kings with the beast for 1 hour. When is this? It says the beast that you saw, he is of the 7. He's joined to the 7. He's a part of them, but he is the 8th. The 8th what? He's the 8th king. There are 7 heads, and those 7 heads are 7 kings. Then after the 7th head falls, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and finally 1 comes, and after that 1 goes, and the beast becomes king number 8. Now this is a beast without a head, because all the heads are gone. So the beast doesn't have a head now. He appears, and the Bible says at this point he comes out of the bottomless pit. And the 10 horns receive power as kings for 1 hour with the beast. When the heads are gone, in other words, the beast is no longer manifesting himself through heads. Now he's manifesting himself through 10 horns. They give their power and their strength to the beast for 1 hour. But what do these 10 horns do? You know what they do? The Bible says, these shall hate the whore, make her naked, eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. So these 10 horns turn against the woman and destroy the woman. Because there has been this romance between the heads and the woman for the entire history of the beast. But finally, in the last moments of time, the 10 horns come into power with the beast when he arises from the bottomless pit, and they destroy the woman. Now, if the woman is the Roman Catholic Church, plus her friends, Rome is gone. But the beast is still alive. Now, if that doesn't make sense, if what I'm saying doesn't fit, somebody please show me after the meeting. But why is this important? Because it has implications for the mark of the beast. Because we have always said the mark of the beast is a mark of the Roman Catholic Church. But when I look at the scenario, I'm saying, how can the Roman Catholic Church be the beast? Because it's the woman. So, furthermore, the woman is destroyed and the beast remains. The beast is fighting against Christ at the end, but the woman is gone. So, all the things you know about the beast, stop thinking religious power and start thinking secular power. So that's one thing I want us to think about. Secondly, what does it mean that the beast comes out of the bottomless pit? Well, if you ever fall in a bottomless pit, you might get a better idea of what this means. If you drop in a bottomless pit, what hope do you have of getting out? I conclude that the phrase, the abyss, abyssus, the bottomless pit implies a condition in which there is no hope. Spiritually, because we are talking about spiritual things, right? So there is a spiritual state where hope has left this institution or wherever it is coming from. At this time, the beast will arise without any head. We are talking about a totally godless power. Now, the influence of religion, even false religion, has kind of helped to disguise the beast for its career. It has been underground. It has been working with the heads. But finally, at the end, it appears in its true nature, and it's a totally godless power. It is absolutely against religion, because you know why? It destroys false religion, and it tries to destroy God's people, so it cannot itself be a religious power. You know what I think it is? I think it is atheism. Today, Europe is the most atheistic continent on the planet. It's an atheistic power, I believe. Today, Europe, if you talk about God in Europe, most places, God has nothing to do with their thinking, nothing to do with their system of government. That's why you see rapidly all over Europe, laws are being passed that appall you. I mean, yeah, that's where communism had its roots, right? Europe began with Charles Darwin, when he began to teach that man came from microscopic molecules, amoeba, whatever you call them, and rose up, and we are nothing but glorified apes. And man is Homo sapiens, the pinnacle of existence. Man, the wise one. Who do they worship actually? Themselves. Man has become the god of Europe. And that's why they make all these crazy rules. They think nothing of legalizing prostitution. Same-sex marriage is in about 15 countries in the world. 11 of them are European countries. And Europe and the United States are pushing it on every country on the world. They have threatened Jamaica, Kenya, Uganda, Zambia. They have threatened to withdraw aid from these countries if we will not legalize homosexuality. You think, are these people crazy? Don't they have anything to do? other than to be pushing this thing upon other people? Why on earth do you take something that is so contrary to reason, contrary to scripture, contrary to history and to nature, and the greatest powers on earth are pushing it on everybody else with demands for compliance or suffer the consequences? But this is what happens when you have driven God out of your thinking. And so Europe is an atheistic society that has set itself to rise up against God. In fact, I'll show you something here quickly. Do you recognize this symbol? It's a Tower of Babel. It's one of the symbols that was designed to represent the European Union. Notice it says, Europe, many tongues, one voice. Now at Babel, God was displeased with the fact that they were trying to centralize and to establish a system in rebellion against God. God scattered them upon the earth. Europe has chosen this symbol of God's displeasure to represent, oh yes, and the stars are upside down, which is a satanic star. Europe has chosen this symbol as a symbol of its unity, the thing that represents God's objection to what they were doing. They have chosen as a symbol of their union. This is utter bare-faced blasphemy. Here is the European Parliament building. Yeah, it's Strasbourg, and that's in Belgium. Thank you. And again, you see the design. It's designed to look like an unfinished Tower of Babel. This is bare-faced open blasphemy. And, you know, they have chosen again to represent the EU a woman riding a bull. You might say a woman riding a beast. I mean, it looks so similar to the picture in Revelation of the woman riding the beast. You know, it's a bull, it's not a beast. But you wonder if there is a divine hand behind all of this, pointing you and saying, look, see? Now, Europe is the most socialistic, the most atheistic continent on the planet. In fact, modern communism found its roots in Europe. And Europe is a place where, for the first time, human beings denied the existence of God and set up governments that were based totally on human wisdom. Now, the Bible says that America will create an image of the beast. A system is to be established here that is based on the principles on which Europe has built its empire. We're looking for an atheistic system, socialistic system that is based entirely on human wisdom and not the principles of God. You have two horns like a lamb, you look like you're dealing with Christianity, but you speak like a dragon. That's what we are looking for. The principles of Europe are to be established here. Look in this country and see the principles of socialism. And I don't just mean welfare. I mean the principles of control. The principles of where the government so completely dominates and controls the life of the people that you're not even free to think. Look and see the policies that are being made. Look and see how atheism dominates the policies that are made here in this country. In a country that is majority Christian, maybe 3% atheist or 12%. Very small minority. You cannot teach creation in schools. You cannot determine whether that your children are taught that homosexuality is common, normal, and acceptable. You can't speak against it in certain places. I mean, it's much worse in Canada, but it's coming here too. America, unseen, imperceptibly, is adopting every principle. I mean, communism is coming in through the back door. The control that is being exercised here by the police, by the army. I mean, things that we are used to in the third world, that you have never known here. A police can come and kick off your door anytime. They don't need a warrant to stop you. They can lock you up indefinitely without any reason. We're seeing those things here in the name of national security. It creeps upon you. Satan is working. And these are evidences, brothers and sisters, that we are in the last days, yes, but it's also evidence that that the prophecies of Revelation are being fulfilled And we don't even recognize what is happening because we are looking only in one direction. You know, everybody has their eyes on the papacy, as I have had my eyes there for almost all my Christian life. But then I realized that God's people have two enemies. One of them is false religion, and the other one is a secular power that Satan will use to carry out the persecution, the actual persecution. That's what the prophecy says. Later on, I will demonstrate it even more fully, that this is what the prophecy is focusing on. So, the thing about focusing the wrong way is that something creeps up behind you and you don't know till you are run over. And that's what is happening. We have been focused the wrong way. And something is creeping up behind us and we have not seen it. I would compare it to the state of the Jewish nation who knew everything. Look, they could even tell the wise men where he was supposed to be born, in Bethlehem of Judea. They knew everything. They were the receptacles for the oracles of God. They were the guardians of truth, and they knew all the prophecies and they could recite them. They have everything figured out exactly. In fact, they have it figured out so exactly. If you ask the Jews today, they can tell you how the Messiah is going to come. They can tell you exactly how and where he will come. Everything. It passed them by 2,000 years ago. They who knew everything. Look here. I believe Adventists need to revise some of the things that we believe because we know everything. Everything is pot. What is coming on the planet, brothers and sisters, is to test God's people. You can't be tested if you know what is coming. You can't be tested. Remember what I said at the beginning. The message is always the same, the everlasting gospel. But the context in which it comes changes. The context always changes. God has never tested his people twice in the same way. Never twice in the same way. It was for Cain and Abel, it was the kind of sacrifice that they brought. In every crisis, in the Reformation, it was, how do you relate to justification by faith? In 1844, it might have been, how do you respond to the message of the fall of Babylon and the investigative judgment? Today, sit down and look for the exact same thing to come back in the exact same way, and you're going to be surprised and left. God's people will not be deceived. Why? Because the Spirit of God is speaking to them. But I believe that I'm speaking God's truth when I encourage you today to go back and re-examine those prophecies and listen to what the Bible is saying. Take away the preconceived ideas. There are some things that we know so absolutely that we will not brook any contradiction or even questioning. I'm glad that nobody has risen up when I say that the beast is not the papacy, because that's a good sign. Because I know that's one of the most deeply rooted verities in Adventism. But if you are telling me that I'm wrong, I'm going to be wanting to see why. What you do with the evidence I just presented. I'm going to be wanting to see this. If you can show me the evidence, I will back away and I'll stand up here and apologize to everybody. But you'll have to show me the evidence. Don't tell me that we have always believed it is so, so it must be so. Think about the things that we are reading and allow the Spirit of God to direct our minds. Because when we understand what is happening now, I believe that the message that the hour of God's judgment is come is going to be present truth. The judgment of the living is what this is going to be focused on. And if we don't understand what is this and when it begins, you don't have anything to say. But it is to be present truth. There is to be something that when you get up and talk to people, they will see everything before their eyes. Click, click, click. And they'll run to say, tell us what to do. And you give them the everlasting gospel. They need to be awakened to recognize that we're at the end of the ages and we are not ready. But you can't say this to anybody unless you believe it. You have to know it first. You have to believe it. You have to understand. Or how can you say this to anybody? Most of what we have been doing is talking about absent truth. We might label it present truth. Our publications are present truth. I know Brother Linford has a present truth. I know there's a present truth ministry in New Guinea. There's one in the Philippines. The first publication Adventists put out was present truth. So the name is popular. But present means now. So, I want to thank you for listening. I don't know if I overstayed my time, but at the very least, I'm going to encourage you to go back and look at some of these things. Now, I won't be talking about all the things that I want to talk about here, because the time is short, and furthermore, I know that I don't want to bring controversy. But I'm going to say that we have some booklets that I brought from Jamaica. One of them is entitled Sodom and the Beast. I have a little over 20 of those books. I think Brother Howard will make them available for the first 20-something people that come. You'll get a copy. Those who don't get, if you'd like to have one, then talk to us and we'll send you a copy, and probably might be able to do something even now. So, a word to the wise is sufficient. But what I'm saying is, study it some more and talk about it, because these are things that merit discussion now. Thank you for listening. God bless you. Let's pray.